Hello, citizens of Biddeford. My name is Bob Provencher, and my mate here is Matt Lozon, and we are starting a brand new show on public access. And Matt will explain to you what it is. It's Meet the Agenda, okay? It's a city council agenda. We want to put it out to you so that hopefully we can get you to go to some of these meetings and state your own opinions, you know.
It's our first time out. We just got the agenda this morning, so we're going to do our best. We got a time constraint here, so we're going to try to keep it under a half hour. In the future, we might do 60 minutes. But our goal really is to walk through what's happened in the most recent meeting. We'll probably go pretty quick through that today, and then walk through the various items on the upcoming city council meeting to make sure the community understands the various things being discussed or voted on and understands, you know, how to have their voice heard if they have a perspective on any of these topics.
And our goal is to present to you as news the facts. There will be no personal thoughts on any of these items, okay? We're just going to give you the facts. No pros or cons, just the facts. And that's we think that's true reporting, and hopefully we will, like Matt said, you know, we will put a fire in you to go to the council meetings and either state that you're for something or that you're against it. You know, I mean, that's your own personal, you know, decision to make. Okay, first thing we're going to do, we're going to give you the results of the last meeting, okay? Which was 2 weeks from this coming Tuesday. The first item that was discussed was property valuation changes, and the downtown properties are going for a lot more than they're evaluated. So they did increase some of the valuations, and I guess they're looking at doing it again because the values are going up even higher than that. Then they considered the minutes and they voted on accepting the minutes. The other thing is the city council is issuing an order, authorizing an order that it says to take care of a code of ordinances for mobile food vendors. We have no ordinance for mobile food vendors, so they want to start one up so that people know when they apply for a permit what they got to abide by. They also, the city council approved the planning of a parking garage, and that it be planned for Lincoln Street, over where Merck used to be. That's where the parking garage is authorized to be planned, and we're kind of hopeful that maybe someday, because of the problem that the train causes in Saco when they're coming from Old Orchard and Portland and Old Orchard, the train actually blocks Main Street in Saco. So we're kind of hoping that the train people will decide to probably move that to Biddeford so that when they stop to pick up people, it won't block off the street in Saco. And that would, we're kind of hoping that someday when that happens, that it'd be moved by the parking garage, and those two facilities will go real well together. Now let's go to the agenda for this coming week, this coming Tuesday night. The first item on the agenda is a second reading on the mobile food ordinance, and then it'll become law. Then for orders of the day, they got authorization of Hills Beach Road Drainage Project, and that's been approved. The approval, they're going to approve that, I mean, at the next meeting. The other thing is approval emergency road and seawall repairs, Shaw Brothers.
Yeah, and to make sure we clarify, because one of the things we want to help people understand the format of city council meetings and how it all works. So, you know, a second reading, there's a couple of readings that happen. So on the food truck, mobile food vendor ordinance, you know, it's an opportunity where you can weigh in from the public. the orders of the day, these are items that are actually being voted on at the meeting unless they get tabled or they get amended. And, with those, the public does have an opportunity on every item to speak specifically to that item for 3 minutes. So we'd encourage you to do so. So on the Hills Beach drainage, if you live in the Hills Beach area and you've got a perspective on this and there's a lot of materials online, you've got an opportunity to weigh in. So now on Approval Emergency Road, the seawall repairs, there's a lot of damage, as I understand it, with the recent storms. And I think there's some questions around, hopefully we can get state and federal funding to offset some costs there. But, that's focused on Ocean Avenue, Granite Point Road, love it down there, Fortunes Rocks Road, and Vines Landing ramp repair. So again, if this is something you have a perspective on, I could imagine you definitely would if you live on one of those roads. You've got the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes on this before it goes to a vote. You want to move on?
Okay, the next item is authorization to establish levels of authority for parking garage design. That'll be considered at this meeting. And also the next item, which somehow is tied into it somewhat, although it's separate, is the approval process to determine downtown parking management plan. And in the memo that the Jim Bennett put out, the city manager, he's planning on having 3 public sessions for people to come in and have at different times, at different times when they're still formulating this parking plan. So people will have plenty of voice input at these public meetings. So we encourage you to attend these public meetings. We want the citizens of Biddeford to participate in their government. That's what our country was founded on. And so we want you to be a good American and to come and support these council meetings.
So maybe digging into a couple of particular points. So on 7C and 7D, which is the levels of authority for parking garage design and then determined downtown parking management plan. We got these right before, but I had a chance to skim through some of it. I do think it's important to recognize that, while these are very intertwined, the votes on them and the discussion about them happen at a more focused, specific level. So, you might hear, hey, you can only comment on, the plan to designate authority around the garage. If that spurs you to think of things that you have comments on in terms of, the parking plans or anything else, at the end of the meeting, there's public comment where you can speak on anything that's not specifically on the agenda for 5 minutes. On these pieces, for the levels of authority, I think that the fundamental point there, reading through this, is that there's a lot that needs to get done to implement the full parking plan, which includes a garage and, according to supporting documents, I think this sums it up. The parking structure is being paid for by 2 sources of funds, namely parking fees and increased funding into the TIF account by valuation growth. So, if you're a landlord that's impacted by increased valuation, higher taxes with that, there's an opportunity to speak about that. On the other side of it, the parking fee part, I think that's where this item 7D, starts to become important in terms of, we've made the decision to go ahead with the garage. It's very clear that the way we fund that garage is via parking fees and the TIF funds. Now it's a question of how is that implemented, which, according to this, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for the public to get involved. And I'm pleased to see in these materials that the recommendation is to have a a very comprehensive, if not the most comprehensive plan to allow for public comment. I think that that's great. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I just wanted to tell the citizens that we wanted to make sure that you get the word that there's going to be plenty of time allotted for public comment, three different sessions they've got planned here. So please support your city government and attend those and get firsthand what's going to happen, and then you can state your opinion.
On item 7D, this actually makes it nice, allows us to now have an opinion. The city manager actually laid out 5, so those involved answering the question, should the new system do the following, which is posed to the public, I think, as well, in terms of if you have a perspective, it's an opportunity to weigh in. So they say 1, switching parking to a user-based system. So meaning switching parking to having paid parking in some form or another. 2, require parking to be paid for by the private sector. So that's another big question that needs to be answered. Like, are we comfortable with TIF funds and user parking there? Maintain the current system of property taxpayers providing the parking, and if so, how does the community find the resources to pay for the new demand? So, the point there, if we stay what we're doing today, how are we going to support increased parking needs? 4, be a blend of keeping the current status of public provided parking for those that benefit for the public funds, but requiring all future parking to be paid for by the private investor. I have to admit, I don't fully follow that one, and I don't want to interpret what I think it says, but I encourage you to read these documents. They're all available online. And the last one is be a blend of having long-term paid parking paid for by the user, and maintaining short-term turnover parking to be supported by the parking fund, but not the user. Again, I don't want to get into injecting opinion or interpreting that, but I encourage you to read this, the memo and the documents here, and attend the meetings and weigh in.
We want you to draw your own conclusions and make your own decisions.
Anything else on these?
There's going to be an executive session at the very end of the meeting, and the 2 items are going to be discussed is labor contract negotiations. That's one of the items in the executive session, and the other one is consultation with city solicitor. That's another item in the executive session.
And to maybe clarify again, trying to help people understand what these different things mean. So an executive session, what that essentially means is, it's typically a topic that has sensitivity around it for legal reasons, or because having it in the public would put the city at a disadvantage in terms of negotiations. So this is sometimes why you see real estate being discussed there. It's not for nefarious reasons. It's if that discussion was happening in the open, it would put us at a disadvantage if we're negotiating with somebody on the other side. So what happens is the councilors go into a separate room with the city's solicitor, the city's lawyer, and that's all private, confidential conversation. They're not allowed to vote in there. So if a decision does get made, or is about to get made, I should say, they need to come back out into the public, and the vote happens in a public forum. So, that's those things. And then we missed a couple items.
Yeah, no, I want to go back to that.
Okay.
What's been authorized is the Hills Beach Road drainage project, a section of the Hill Beach Road where they're going to increase the drainage. And then another one is authorization, what was it?
The reserve account for
Interns, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a pretty neat idea. The city manager Jim Bennett, he also works as an adjunct professor teaching basically city management, municipal management, I believe is what he teaches. So he has exposure to some really high quality students that have a passion and interest in the space, and he's put forth in front of the council the opportunity to bring in some talent that is really high quality and doesn't require a big investment of dollars at this point. There's also an opportunity to identify people we might want to hire in the future, and then they can help with some key projects. So, right now, I don't know this is a thing, but for example, as they're trying to calculate the impact of different forms of the parking plan and how that gets paid for or allocated, that could be the kind of project someone like this could take on. So I think it's a pretty cool idea. Is there anything you want to add?
Also, there is a project to repair the wall that helps to hold Lincoln Street intact over by just a little from Main Street, a little ways down to the Lincoln Street. And at the same time, they're going to put all the wires and stuff, underground, so that that's a project that is being done prior to the actual redesigning of the intersection at the intersection of Lincoln and Main Streets.
Is that something you're working on in the committees you're on?
Yeah, I'm on the Capital Project Committee, and that's an item that comes before us. And we voted to have that project approved.
And on that, just to clarify for the public, again, our goal here is always to just try to get the facts out there. There's, on Lincoln Street right now, as that's happening, there's limited parking. So that has nothing to do with these paid parking plans or anything like that. And there's no plan to have paid parking on Lincoln Street. But want to avoid confusion on that, the same as right now it's forcing cars into different neighborhoods, which I've had some neighbors comment on, feeling like, is this somehow associated with it? It's a temporary thing while that project is moving forward, that they just can't have cars parked there.
As part of this parking plan, excuse me, the whole downtown area, Main Street, and some of the side streets from Main Street are going to be evaluated. Right now, it's 2-hour parking is authorized just about everywhere on Main Street between Elm and Alfred. And they're going to reevaluate each one of these. So things have changed in there since that was put into effect. So now they're going to reevaluate the different areas and see if some areas should be like 1-hour parking. It's understood that, pretty well understood, that if you're going into a restaurant, that kind of takes 2-hour parking.
And again, in the supporting documents here, the ones associated with 7D, approving the process for downtown parking management plan, the city manager covers some of this, and he speaks about the council needed to evaluate the viability and reasonableness of assumptions in order to determine the first major goal was being met around decision to go ahead with the parking garage, and if the paid parking that did exist would be able to fund that. And what he also says in here is that the council had limited discussions on those assumptions, which I think this has led to some of the confusion out there of the plans that were talked about back in, I think, starting in January. Those did call for paid parking on certain streets or recommendations around 1 hour being the most on Main Street. But that's not where this is all going to end up, which is why discussion is so important, because it's a really complicated thing. And again, our hope is the more we'll put the facts out there, hopefully it's going to encourage folks with different opinions to get involved.
Also, we want you to remember that we had a referendum on paid parking on the streets of downtown Biddeford. And in other words, we were against parking meters, which is basically paid parking. And at this council meeting, that was kind of discussed, in general. And both the mayor and the city manager, not the city manager, the city solicitor both said that they could not charge for parking on downtown streets, okay? Because of that referendum. So if you hear there's going to be paid parking on Main Street, that's a bunch of malarkey, because there's not going to be. It was stated very clearly. And, you know, the only way that that could be turned over is for a new referendum to come out to say, yeah, we do want paid parking on downtown. Now, the city has done a lot of work in, you know, we say downtown. What is downtown? The city has defined that now. Downtown is, on Alfred Street, is from where you cross into Biddeford, the bridge over the river, all the way up to Mason Street. So everything, and coming inland now, inboard of that, you got everything from the Saco River on Main Street up to Elm Street, and all the way up Elm Street to where Main Glass is, which is Birch Street. That constitutes the downtown area, everything in between those borders. So there won't be any paid parking on the street there, okay? Now the city is considering to have paid parking in its surface lots. Now, as far as we know, the surface lots are the one on, what's the name of the street where Grady is? There's a lot there.
Foss Street.
Foss Street. There's a lot on Foss Street. So that could become paid parking per the city's intentions right now. And there's also one on Washington Street, that whole lot there. They're considering putting paid parking in there. They're going to put kiosks in there. And also, the third one is the police, the parking lot near the police station. They're considering to put paid parking in there. So if you hear about paid parking, it's not on street parking, it's on city-owned property that are parking lots.
And I think that in the most recent Biddeford beat, there was a map put of current parking. But if you're curious about all, we're definitely missing some lots, you know, over by Mulligan's, the police station. There's
Yeah.
there's a number of spots.
Whatever other properties that the city owns that there's parking on.
And the other part, you know, that I think is important is I worry sometimes we get in a debate about the difference between what is a plan technically and what is being considered technically. You know, the reality is, to sort of like getting a dog, you know, when you decide to get a dog, you're making a decision to get dog food. And the votes in the most recent meeting were sort of like deciding to get a dog and deciding what breed of dog to get, you know, the location. We know we need to get dog food. In this case, the dog food is, we know that we need to charge for parking in different spots in the downtown area. It's just a matter of how and where and how much, you know, which is a lot of questions. So the reason why I say that is to say, I also don't want people to get the wrong expectations when you say they're considering parking in the parking lots. The reality is, if the garage is moving ahead, there will be parking. I mean, there will be paid parking in the parking lots.
That's right.
So there'd be some parking spots probably carved out for short-term, run into George's kind of situation.
Yeah.
But this is why all these debates, I think, are so important. And I think why there's confusion at the last council meeting of, you know, using that dog analogy again.
Yeah.
People are like, well, we need to have a discussion about, can we afford the dog food?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, again, in the materials, you can read it all, the discussions around having 3 public comment opportunities, and you know, it's going to be a 60-day process is what he's recommending from this meeting. So that puts it into May. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to get involved. So I think that's a really good thing. We're running low on time. There's one more agenda item. So it's the 7F, the authorization and creation of reserve account for community service officers. So as I understand this, across Maine, there's a shortage and a difficulty of hiring police officers. So what this is, and I think they said it last night's meeting or the night before, there's towns, I think it's California, that have tried this model, and I believe if we do it, we'll be the first in Maine, so it's an innovative kind of approach. The idea would be there are certain things that police officers do that don't require actually being a full-fledged law enforcement professional. So what this would do would allow for, civilians to be hired, trained in a particular way, and they would sort of look and act like officers. I'm not sure if they carry guns.
I don't think so.
Probably not. So I'm not sure. But what they would be focused on, they'd be on staff, and if there was a parking accident, a car accident, for instance, this kind of person could handle a car accident. So the idea is to take a year and test this new program and see if it saves, if it's cost effective, and also if it allows, some high quality people to get in to sort of offset, what's a challenge for every community in Maine right now.
So that would kind of free the police officers to actually do the kind of work that's more important, for a police officer to do. Okay, so you've been listening to Meet the Agenda, which we derived from Meet the Press. And we want you, our goal once again is for you to get into city government, participate in city government, and that would be the greatest outcome of this show.
Yeah, I'll say, nothing would make me more proud and happy of our community than to see, people at meetings expressing for, against. The last council meeting was awesome. You had counselors with different perspectives. You had people from the community with different perspectives, business owners, residents, a bunch of people that had never been before. Like, that's awesome. And
it was done, very orderly. There was no shouting, no yelling, and it really was a very good council meeting, one of the best ones I've ever been to.
And I think that's when we're at our best, when all voices are considered. So there's a bunch of items here that will be voted on. You got 3 minutes if you want to talk about those at the meeting. It's at Tuesday night, 6 p.m. At City Hall. Anyone can go. And then at the end of the meeting, there'll be public addressing the council, which anybody can go to talk for 5 minutes on anything that wasn't on the agenda. You can do that even if you're not a resident, so if you're a business owner, but I do believe the current council rules allow for residents to go first, but anybody is welcome. So it's our first show. We sort of got these at the last minute. Hopefully we'll have a big improvement as we go.
Oh, we'll be much better prepared.
And that's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.